So, okay. So, now that we are in here, let's talk about the UI. No, we're not going to talk about the blue and the green, but we're going to talk about the UI itself. So, we've got a couple of things to start with. First things first, you will find that up here is... Do I have that turned on? I don't have the thing turned on. You'll find that during this playthrough, you are going to see events appearing up in this corner. This is something that OBS does, the recording software that I'm using. It's not part of the base game. It's only there because it makes life a little bit easier for people watching. If you want your events to appear up here, you can't do that. But we'll talk about that once we actually get to the event log. Let's start off down here in display. Events are everything that the game throws at you. So anytime the game does something of importance, it's going to throw an event at you. This tick box here makes them appear in this section here. Personally, I don't like that. The text is kind of difficult to see, and turns happen so often that it doesn't show you old stuff, so it's very difficult to read. But some people use it, and if you only have one monitor, it's kind of the only way to easily see events. So, while also viewing the screen. So you can use this to make events appear here. I'm going to leave it on for a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. Colonies will show you colonies. You use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So, where's Earth? Earth is Mercury, Venus, Earth is there. So, you'll notice, if we toggle that little green circle here indicates that you have a colony on that body. So, that's highlights your colonies. Jump points is just lets you see jump points and Lagrange points. We actually have a Lagrange point up here is that Jupiter? Yeah, we have, so Jupiter's over here, but we have a Lagrange point over here at the Lagrange point 3, I think it is. So we have a Lagrange point here. It says LP1 because it's the first Lagrange point within the system, but it's over here in Jupiter's L3 point. So jump points here lets you toggles the visibility of those jump points and Lagrange points. We'll talk about those later. We actually have a second one all the way out in Minerva's L1 as well. So that's kind of useful. Planets toggles the visibility of planets as a whole. Dwarf planets toggles the visibility of dwarf planets. Moons toggles the visibility of moons. Asteroids toggles the visibility of all asteroids. Fleets toggles the visibility of fleets, so it turns fleets off and on. Life pods does the same for life pods, wrecks, and waypoints. And survey locations. Now, survey locations over here, these are gravitational survey locations, so you can hide those if you don't want them in your view. Mineral packets are for mass drivers, so mass drivers use mineral packets to send. They're off by default, but you can turn them on so you can see the mineral packets to make sure that your mass drivers are working. Active sensors will show the labels and ranges of any active sensors that are visible for you. Fire control ranges does the same for any fire controls that you can see. Now, these only work for your own because you can't really see fire control ranges for other people, but I don't think so. Weapon range is the same for weapons. This will show you what range your weapons are. So either the loaded missile or any missile that you have on the ship, even if it's not necessarily loaded into a launcher, will be displayed. Movement tail. Now, we don't have one, but they look a little bit like the comets. So movement tail, you'll see this little indicator here behind any object that moves, and it will basically draw a line between where the object was and where the object is within the last increment. So movement tail lets you easily visually identify how fast and in which direction the object is moving. This only applies to fleets, by the way. Hide escorts are not really functional at the moment because there is no threat formation right now in the game. So that doesn't really do anything just yet, but it hides fleets that are in a threat formation to another fleet. Geo survey points tells you how many survey points it takes to survey an object. So you can see that it only takes 1 point to survey Crommelin and most comets, but it takes like 256 to survey Uranus. Takes 244 to survey Mercury. So this tells you how many survey points it takes to survey something. Star names hides the name of the star itself. So Sol A G2V. So Sol A means because it's the first star in the system. If we had a binary, we would have Sol A and Sol B. It's a G2 class of spectrum V. I think no, G2 is a spectrum. I think. Anyway, it's a G2V type star. If you know star types, this will be informational to you. If you don't know star types, you can always go look them up on Wikipedia. But otherwise, this tells you like what color it is and what size it is, what spectral range it is, stuff like that. That is all dependent. That just determines where the Goldilocks zone is, what temperature things are, stuff like that. Planet names hides the names of planets. Dwarf planet names hides the names of dwarf planets. Moon names, asteroid names. These will hide the names of things. So you can see, for example, that nobody gives a shit, you know, if because in Sol all the asteroids are named because these are all real asteroids. In the next system, they're going to be asteroid 1, asteroid 2, asteroid 3, asteroid 4. So, you know, declutters things. Fleet next order will have a name on all fleets of what their order is and what they're doing next. Comet path tells you what path comets will travel. So, for example, Wild here does laps between the Sun and just past the orbit of Jupiter, which point it'll turn around and come back in. This is only really useful to make sure that you're not establishing a colony on, say, for example, this comet over here that is going to end up literally trillions of kilometers away from Sol. So, you know, minimal use, but there it is. Orbital path stars, you're only going to see this if you have binary systems, but it shows the orbital path of stars. Orbital path planet is on by default, and it shows these rings of the planetary orbital paths. You can also turn them on for dwarf planets and moons. So if we go up, take a look at Jupiter. Take a look at Jupiter. You can see that it's got the orbital path for its moons, and we can turn those on and off. I strongly advise against turning them on for asteroids, although I suppose you can. It does make single asteroids a little bit easier to spot, but it's just no. So I advise against it for the asteroids. Surveyed bodies shows you, you can see here. So currently Earth is the only one that's surveyed, but we can have a little white circle here that just flags any object that's already been surveyed. So once we start surveying, you'll see that the survey indicator will light up. You can always turn that off. Mineral concentrations flags anybody that has been identified with minerals. Unsurveyed bodies will never show the mineral concentration because you don't know. So it's only minerals that you know about. And it is this yellowish indicator. Obviously, we have minerals, so that will turn it on. Center on selected objects will let you center on things that you click on. So when you click on an object, it selects that object, right? If you have center on selected object, when you click on it, it will instead center on it. And let's just scroll in and out a little bit easier, because it will actually scroll on whatever is centered, not on where your mouse is pointing. So keep that in mind. Asteroid colonies only shows asteroids that you've set a colony to. I advise setting this as active. You can also set asteroids with minerals only, so it will only show asteroids that you actually have minerals. I strongly advise setting at least one of these as active, because the asteroids that don't have colonies or minerals are useless to you. So keep at least, I advise keeping at least one of these active, but I'm going to leave them on just so you can see how the game looks. Fleet heading will tell you what direction. We'll keep a little indicator that gives you the degrees in which direction the fleet is moving. Order, time, and distance will have a little indicator on fleets of how far away the next order is. Body fleet coordinates. This one is only really for screen readers. This will have coordinate indicators of where a fleet is. If you're using a screen reader, it is useful to have this ticked, because this will let your screen reader tell you what coordinates a body is at, and then you can kind of build a mental map of where everything is. If you're doing sub gameplay, which we're going to talk about once we get into more advanced concepts, then this can come in handy, because you can kind of figure out where things are. But there are easy way to do those. No child-parent overlaps. You'll notice, for example, if we go here, hang on. So you'll see that Jupiter is kind of sitting on its own once you zoom out far enough. If you untick that, that kind of makes the moons... Well, it's supposed to make the moons not go away, but I guess that's not really working properly at the moment. Hide surveyed locations will hide things that have already been surveyed. So at the moment, Earth is the only thing that has been surveyed. Hang on. No, these are for the gravitational survey locations. Did we turn those off? Yeah, these ones. So once they've been surveyed, this will make them disappear. I advise, if you don't have this ticked, then they'll just fill in and turn white. I advise to turn this off, because it makes things a lot easier to identify which ones have been surveyed. Packet content is useful if you have packets visible. It will tell you what's actually in them. Salvo launch platform is when we get to missile gameplay, it will tell you who launched the missile. Salvo target will tell you where the missile is going to. Passives versus signatures. So Earth has a deep space tracking station, right, which is a combined passive EM and thermal sensor. We'll talk about those later. But this will tell you how far those sensors will see various signature strengths. So if you know that you're looking for something at about 100 signature strength, you can turn this on and know, okay, if that thing enters this distance, I'm going to spot it this far away. It is of minimal use, but it has its moments. All windows linked to race. This is on by default. I recommend that you leave it on. What this means is that every window that you have open, and Aurora will open a lot of them, every window will link to the active race. It is not very useful in a single game that we're going to be playing, but if you have multiple player empires, you want to ideally keep this so that you're not accidentally working on one empire when you think you're working on the other one. Keep tactical in background will take this window here and keep it behind any other window that you have open. So for example, if you have this window open and you're running a turn, when you run the turn, at the end of that turn, this window will pop back up on top. If you don't have this ticked, then when you click this and select it, at the end of the turn, this will remain open and the other window will remain in the background. So it's very easy to end up with many windows open. I strongly suggest that you keep this ticked. Next, contacts. I'm not going to talk about this just yet because we don't have any contacts to work with and it's just going to be esoteric. So we'll get back to this one once we actually have some contacts to work with. Minerals will give you a mineral list of all the minerals within the system for each individual body. It looks like we actually have kind of shitty minerals, so yeah, might re-roll that. Minerals in text, this will give you it in text form, so you can just copy and paste it. This is only useful if you're planning on, if you're wanting to get like a mineral breakdown for the system they're going to put into stories. So this is otherwise useless to you. Artifacts will give you a list of known ruins, known ancient constructs, and known wrecks. Ruins is great, wrecks is great, ancient constructs is related to invaders, so I don't know if they even spawn with invaders turned off. Survey sites will give you a list of planets that are ground survey capable. Obviously we have none, we'll get back to that later. Body info will give you the information for the selected body. So you click on it to select it, as we talked about. And you can turn off that centering so it doesn't keep jumping back and forth. But this is the body that's been centered on, and will give you the body info that you would otherwise be able to get from the system info. So this is just a little shortcut to that. All bodies will give you a list of all bodies within the system that we have selected. Military will give you your order of battle. So this will give you a list of all ships, or even with civilian ships within the system, or if you untick this, within the entire galaxy. Waypoints will give you where you can control waypoints, so you create them and also view them in here, what they are. We'll get to waypoints later. And miscellaneous is where you can add themes, reset window position. So if you accidentally move a window, for example, like down here, and you can't get it back because it's behind your taskbar, you can reset windows, and that will reset. Oh, it's supposed to reset that position. Reset windows. There you go. So that resets the position. And one other very important thing that you're going to find on the miscellaneous tab is the version number. So this is the current game version number. So if this is not the latest version number, you haven't updated properly. If you followed the instructions, which would be in a previous episode by now correctly, you should end up with version 1.11 for this walkthrough, or the correct version number of whatever the latest one is once Steve updates after this. So now that we've talked about the important ones here for now, because we haven't talked about contacts yet, we'll talk about that later once we have some. Let's move on to the rest of the UI. Increment control. You have increment length and subpulses. So increments are how much time you want to travel. Aurora is in that little niche space where it's a combination of a real-time and turn-based, in that everything happens in real time scales, but you control exactly how much time passes, and then time passes for everyone. If you don't click a button, no time passes. So it's not real time in that case, but everything happens across realistic timescales and the same timescales. So if you click 5 seconds, which is the smallest one, 5 seconds will pass. You see at the moment it's exactly midnight on January 1st, year 1. If we click, let's say 5 minutes, it is now 5 minutes past 12 in the morning on January 1. So time will pass at exactly the rate that you click it. We can also, we're supposed to have an event. Yeah, we're supposed to see the events, but oh well. Okay, so that's increments. What's subpulses then? Well, the game checks every period of time within your increment to see, should I be interrupting the turn processing? So for example, let's say there's an enemy that's launched missiles at you. If you click 1 day, then those missiles are not going to take a day to get to you. They're going to get to you instantly. They're going to smash into your face. You might necessarily want to see those missiles and do something about them before that. The subpulse is how often the game checks, should I be interrupting this because the missiles are about to smash into this guy's face? So for example, at 5 seconds, that means every 5 seconds for that day, the game will go, should I be interrupting? No. Next 5 seconds. Should it be interrupting? No. Next 5 seconds. And it's going to do that check every 5 seconds until it goes, oh, okay, I should be interrupting this, and then it's going to interrupt it. The default is automatic, which I believe on one day is at about 1 to 2 hours. So if you have a missile that's 10 minutes out and you click one day, it's not going to interrupt until about an hour later, which means that missile is going to smack you, and then it's going to be like 40 minutes later. So most of the time, automatic is fine. Very, very rarely are you going to have issues that require you to deal with in the 5 seconds or 30 seconds or something. In a combat situation, or when you expect a combat situation, then you're going to want to run shorter subpulses. So keep that in mind. This is how often the game checks whether you should be interrupted, and the turn processing needs to be stopped immediately so that something is brought to your attention. Whereas this is how much time you want to pass. So if you tell it 1 hour, then it will run 1 hour, and as long as nothing interrupts it within that 1 hour, then it will then stop and give you the report of what has happened within that hour. So now that we talked about increments, let's go look at the windows that we're dealing with. This is, let me just close this. These over here, just move the map around, zoom in and out. Dragging with the left mouse button and zooming in and out with the scroll wheel replicates that. So these are largely useless unless you, I don't know, if you have a mouse, you really don't need these. You can just drag it around.